All right, hi people. So I've made a little mobile game, and I thought it would be a good idea to share how I make systems for mobile games like this one. I'll show you very quickly what kind of gameplay this is, but basically this is like a level-based runner. So you have a little character, you have a menu. I chose to actually display the mechanics. Let me mute. To display the mechanics using the menu, I feel not enough people do that, but then again, I wouldn't call my example the best one for sure. Because like either you can hold to go to places, either you can drag the player around. But anyway, the whole game is about dragging the player around, so I thought it would be a good idea. So you'd have objectives per level, and then just drag the player around and do the runner thing, right? Nothing very special to that. In this case, yeah, I just need to pick the coin and get score, do stuff. Should have yet stars. Anyway, so that's the kind of game. Alright, moving on to systems. So I use four main types of thingies in my systems. I have the enum data handler. The name kind of will be confusing at this point because enum shouldn't mean much to you. Until you see what I'm talking about. Managers, which control behaviors, and behaviors which do stuff. And then what I call linkers. Linkers is not any link. I just want to make sure. It's the name I gave it. So that's the overall structure of how it works. You have the Unity editor, which is a player input, which directly is gonna do stuff to the enum data handler, put content. And that content will be fed to whatever other managers in runtime. Or more like they will be picking it from it. The enum data handler is just a storage box. So what it looks like, it just looks like this. This script, where basically every single level will be on this. Every single obstacle will be on this. Every single collectible or anything that's data will be stored on this. And then I press my magical button, rebuild enums. It's some little thing that I came up with. So basically every single thing that in there are scriptable objects for most, but it can be pretty much anything. And for example, the obstacles will be scriptable objects. I'll talk about my editors a bit later. I love making those. Anyway, then I press the redeem button, which will internally write enums. Just generate them according to some string or some whatever I decided to do. And then those, I will use them. I will use them either for the length of the enum, for the content of the enum, and most importantly, use those enums and content and length or whatever to access those. That way I have purely dynamic data and I don't need to touch any code to generate content. If I want to add a level, I create my level scriptable object, I put it here, I press a button, and then it will appear in game. Simple, right? I can do a quick test if you want. So create a new map, also scriptable objects. Map, let's say 10. Oh, that's gonna confuse that thing. No, not really. Map 10. So we can add some objectives. I don't know, I'm not showing how to do that yet. And create some map. Is it logged by default? No, and whatever this is. Right. And I'll just put this here. Now I called it map 10, but I just want to show you it's not actually gonna care about the name, it's gonna care about the index on this thing. Rebuild. And if I go to the enum data handler, you will see that now, hey, I have map 10. And when I launch a game, the magic part is that, hey, I'll have map 10, which is actually 06, because it is the 5th entry here. Because the array start at 0. Anyway, so that's how I do my stuff. Let me remove that before I forget. So that's the enum data handler. Now I have managers. Managers is how the game is being led, how everything controls it. It's actually not such an uncommon way to do stuff on your day. I didn't do it in the most proper ways because I didn't care to that extent. I did it with a bunch of singletons. Like usually you would want to do with some inheritance going on. To have the game manager or whatever, game manager, god manager, or main manager, whatever you call it. This one is going to control what state the game is at. And the main stuff like how each manager can talk to each other. If you want to do it that way, I wouldn't do it the other way. Well, but you're not me, so. And basically, most importantly, tells manager what to do and when to do. So, for example, initialization and reset. Usually, I would want them as 1, which is going to be init. Do not, well, as soon as you can, stop using the start method. Awake, sure, you can if you have like arrays dictionary list you want to initialize or some constructors, go ahead. But for anything else, no, it's not good because you have too few control over it. If you have one, but if you start to do stuff like to, for example, set up generate the map and do things, and when you get to reset, you might have another function unless you do what I used to, which is public start. And in the end, you're going to have 2 parallel methods, which pretty much going to be doing the same thing. And at the point where you're going to change some content, you're going to update while you're still making the system. Now, you might forget something at some point, or you're going to have just a copy paste of your code at 2 places. And this is not very good. I would not recommend. So very quickly, you're gonna find yourself wanting to have control over everything. It's kind of like obsessive girlfriend, except that it's with your own game. Obsessive parenting. Oh well, doesn't matter. Then I'll have the other managers. Each manager would be in charge of their own stuff, which means that the UIMB, UI manager behavior, yeah, I call them like that actually, manager behavior. Nope, not with the U. I'm not Unity, which switches between British and American. And it's gonna basically, anytime something has to change in the UI, anytime anything happens, you want to display part of UI, you want to change some variable, this thing will be in charge. Either of doing it itself, either telling another script, which would be a behavior, to do it. So basically transmitting the order. But I would never ask the player to change a slider on the UI. That's not his job. His job is to do what players do. A player pref, for example, is in charge of just saving the data and loading the data. Yeah, I know player pref is not the best way to do that, but I got lazy. So I was just like, I just need some saving. And yes, I did that. Do note that even the player pref for the save data and load data uses the data from the enum manager behavior. Whenever I create a new level, it's going to have to store it, right? And so it actually checks for every single level and stores how many stars you had on that level. Simple stuff, right? So then the map makes sense, and the background. You saw the kind of parallax background going on, that thing. And for the player, there is something that I don't like. at all. For most, well, when it comes to a bigger game, maybe I can understand, but for most games, I actually don't like having the player controls on the player script because the player dies, and that usually is a pain. So what I like to do is actually have all my player controls, input, collision, everything on the manager. And so when the player dies, I can just make the player null or recruit a new player, right? And that's it. I'm sure I'm not getting any errors, and I know I have full control over it. So then for things like collisions, I need just to have linkers, or behaviors, which I'll talk about later, to tell the manager. And same, the player manager will be storing the player stats. If the player dies, your stats will die. And then people like having one class for the player stats and one class for the player, and I'm like, why would you do that? Just have one for both. Anyway, so examples about that, enough about me ranting. So the player handler is just like this, got the player prefab, some other prefabs, some stats, and basic stuff, with some events. I didn't put many, and whatever points. In this game, if you've realized, I do actually store every single collectibles collected and every single obstacle hit. And the way I do that is actually fairly simple. I just pull data from the enum handler. Then I just create a dictionary using the type of obstacle and how many of them. And every time I hit something, then I tell the UI, hey, something has been hit. Then just display it. And I'm not going to show too much code because looking at a foreign code like that is not going to help at all. But basically, when I hit something, then I'm just like update the counter, whatever is on the top, with this type of content and how many. For this case, I actually abstracted quite a bit so I can use the same method for both obstacles and collectibles, even though there are different enums. Just in case I'm gonna add some other things, like for example, power-ups pickups, how many I've collected. I don't want to keep creating new methods like that. That's me being extreme. All right. For example, this is telling what speed and how to. So for example, the behavior that controls it is actually going to pick up from these values. Because the job of a behavior is not to, it's just to apply the stuff, to do the stuff. It's not necessarily responsible for knowing the details behind it. Plus, if you want to change all the values at one point, this is pretty cool. Everything I want to change, what are the speeds, the offsets, the map generation stats, everything, I do it at the same place. Call it clean. Anyway, and then I have the behaviors and linkers. I'm gonna first explain the linkers because I found them extremely handy. Linkers are basically little classes which I use them a lot, especially for the UI. I'm gonna show you this one because I know I overuse linkers here. So for example, a linker in this case example is just one tiny class which has a bunch of scene references. It knows where every single image is, every single text. And all what a behavior needs to do is pick from those. So you have a level 1, a behavior. The behavior is actually just going to be looking for that little linker, and then if you want to change the amount of stars, the behavior will do it. The job of the linker is just to store. And so that way I don't have the managers with shitloads of references, and I don't like the behavior with shitloads of references. You just have one linker, or multiple linker in some case. So I use them quite extensively. Let's see. Oh yeah. And then behaviors is just do stuff. For example, the parallaxing, its responsibility is to move when allowed. So he actually checks for whether or not the parallax manager allows things to move, which is a private variable, well, a property to be exact. And I'm gonna try and show you with the debug mode. There, can move. It picks from there, so I don't need to check for every single behavior when things need to happen. I check it on the manager, and then everything will just pick from there and move or not, and then it just sets variable proper to it, shows themselves, and do their job. Why sort of prefabs? It was actually pretty easy to do. Some pooling on this one. So basically what happens is that when I run, I'm gonna have, do not do that. Okay, some level. Go. So the levels are actually gonna check until they reach a position and then instantiate themselves at the other hand. Like so. That's why. And usually I wouldn't do it like that, but I got extremely lazy. Anyway, so next, my custom expectors. For the collectibles, I actually did not do any of those because collectibles are pretty simple. For the obstacles, I totally did. So what happens is that the path that every obstacle is going to be doing is basically that 5-on-5 map. I can change what speed it's going, when it starts, the speed it has when it starts, and how many rows from the player will it activate itself. And from there, whenever you reach a row, for example, I want 2 rows close to the players, it will actually start doing that movement upward. For example, there are 7, I didn't actually use those, and for this one is 1. This one is very special because it's through the laser beam, which is not something that others have. So I actually have a behavior controlling the laser beam. The UFO thing, 3 blocks away, it will start doing its movement. That's super handy, so I don't need to type a line of code for standard obstacles. For ones as good as this one, I have to. Levels. Levels are basically maps. So I can tell, all right, I want this one to be 30 blocks long. And then each map is going to have objective, which I can add. I can have finish map. Then it will have success means that when you reach the end, it's going to check every success, every failure. And if not everything is success, then you don't get the star for objective. There are 3 stars for objective, for score, and for hit. How many obstacles you hit. Usually it's 0. I'm being quite harsh on this one. I'll put a variable there if I want to extend it. Anyway, then if you want, for example, I need to fetch more than, let's say, 100 coins, and if I do mission success. But if I hit all more than 10, mission failure. Fairly simple, right? Usually I would actually do the opposite, like if I do less than 10, then success. But anyway, then this is for another star. This is the speed of the map, how fast the tiles will be moving. This is for unlockable maps, which I haven't done, and then the painting. So when I click, left click, right click. It will use the data from the enum data handler here. Those are the tags I've set here. The BSD, the GDU, whatever, quick tag. So if I click left and right, I will do that. If I click Control left click, it will do for the collectibles. If I do, then I have the painting. So if I do Shift and Control, and for example, that, it's gonna paint directly this one. And if I do just Shift and whatever, it's gonna paint this one. I'm gonna just create my maps like that. When it's done, put everything in the enum data handler and rebuild. Pretty cool. Anyway, I think that's pretty much it. Yeah, I think so. Anyway, if you have any questions, please ask ahead. And I hope you enjoyed. See you around.